Hello, guys. Welcome to the recap of the grand finale of FTX Crypto Cup. And guys, what a final it was! I mean, it was unbelievable. It was worthy of all the finals of the finals because what an unbelievable fighting spirit by both the players. And yeah, the games were truly not up to the scratch of the quality wise, but like the fighting spirit was all there. So let us first look at the game between Taimur and Jan Nepomucci because they were also fighting for the third and fourth place. And this is the game number three, where before where the score was 1-1. So it all depends, what happens in the next two games. And Jan once again starts with B3, which has been a trendy thing apparently. So b3, d5, bishop b2, knight f6. It's all very common. I mean, it's common way to play from both sides. g3 now, trying to catch it to this bishop as well. And now, simply bishop f5 is a common way to play. Bishop g2, e6, d3. Now, usually they go h6 and they want to put this bishop on h7. But knight d7 is fine as well. Jan goes for knight d2, and already I feel. Timur made a wrong decision. He went for bishop c5. Instead, I think bishop g6 is preferred. You will see why. Because first of all, it prevents e4 for now at least. Because I can just take here. You have to take back, and I go bishop b4, pinning this, and also attacking this pawn. Ideally, you don't want to play c3, as white because it hinders this bishop. And there is no good way to defend this pawn. I mean, right away. So this was preferred, but Timur went for bishop c5. Now the problem is white simply goes e4. You don't really want to take because it only helps white. So bishop g6 and now simply e5, and white is having big space advantage, and simply black has to wait too much time, developing his pieces. h4 is pretty decent. h6, knight h3, bringing the knight via f4, knight e7, knight f4. Yeah, till now I think Jan played a very nice game. He managed to put all his pieces on the right square. And here he just could not resist to attack and went for knight h5. Instead, I think d4, chasing the bishop away, and then c4, again trying to, play this, or c5. Black has to go c6. And now simply something like castles, gives white a huge advantage in the sense because black lacks space on both the wings, and slowly we can even push him further down on the queen side. Black will never be able to break on the king side because e6 is very soft. So overall, this would have given white a big advantage. Jan goes for knight h5, which is not bad, but the continuation is. So knight h5 castles, you have to defend the pawn. And now g4, this is like too much. This is asking for it. And Timur, of course, found the correct approach when knight g6 is attacking the pawn. And it's not easy to defend it anyway. So knight f3 is more or less forced. And now f6, of course. We have been taught from the very beginning कि जब भी आपके opponent attacks from the flank, मतलब ये flank से अगर white attack कर रहा है or maybe this flank as well, always try to break in the center. So f6 is a very logical way of doing it, breaking in the center. ef6 is forced, knight f6, knight f6, and now Timur, I mean, he's a very strong player, and I'm really surprised that he didn't take with the rook back because it is very natural that white's only trump in this position is this dark square bishop, and once we get rid of it, uh, it's going to be really good for black. For example, here I just don't see a move for white. Like next to knight f4 is coming, e5 is there, plus all the dark square weaknesses. There is a check coming, rook f8. It just feels like black is going to win pretty quickly. So I mean, white cannot really take here, and if you cannot take with the bishop, then of course it's better to take, with the rook, so that a rook also breathes some air. Instead, Timur took here, but now after queen d2, it's not at all easy to defend this pawn. For example, if king g7, we just simply go g5, using the fact that this is a pin. And this is again a big problem for black. So queen d2, e5, and here Jan simply took on h6, which is okay, but I think d4 is much better. The point is now after d4 you have to go back. You just cannot really take this and give up all these squares. So you have to go back, d, fe, and now you simply take it. The point is Now this bishop is more active because the pawn is not there on f6. And now if you go knight f4, I'm simply going to castle. And the next move, I'll take something. I'll take bishop e5. And worst come to worst, I can always change queens and go to a pawn up endgame. So Jan first took this knight f4, and he goes for g5. This is again getting very very sharp. F7 is a nice way to defend. Gf6, knight g2. King f1 is forced, queen f6. Yet now, like last few moves were quite forcing because everything was hanging and you want to, get rid of some pieces. And rook f8 is again a very nice move, attacking the knight. And the knight cannot be moved because f2 pawn is hanging. Rook h3 is forced. And here, it is very strange the move Timur played. He went for d4. I mean, blocking your own bishop, first of all, and also giving up all this, squares for the knight to come later on. Instead, rook g6, king h1, e4. And yeah, I think it's black who's calling the shot. I mean, once you remove the knight, f2 is hanging. And yeah, basically, I don't really see how white can defend in the long run. But after d4, rook g3, king h8, rook f1. Now you can see the point behind white. First of all, he's the upper pawn. And now f2 pawn is guarded and we are ready to, move the knight to either to g5 or to d2 and then bring the knight over to the square. So Timur went bishop d6, knight g5. He looks for some counterplay, but it's not there anymore. Knight h7, just to make sure that there are no tricks with e4 later on. G4, just because getting out of this X-ray, because also sometimes black was threatening to play this E4 and bishop G3. B5, of course, generating some counterplay, via C5, C4, bishop C1, C4, G5, rook F3. Okay, black has gotten some counterplay. The pawn is attacked, so rook G3 is forced, rook F7. Again, E4 is threatened, so Nepo goes here. And here, I think Timur just lost the thread because he went for rook c8. Instead, I think something like a5, a4, trying to exchange as many pawns and also opening up some files on the queen side for the rook would have, given Timur some drawing chances. Instead, after rook c8, rook d1, cd, rook c2, rook d2, white has managed to, nullify this, this attack, and also he managed to nullify this, on the second rank, this rook activity. And after this, Nepo managed to win without any problems. So give up this pawn for some activity. Now you will see this pawn is going to queen eventually. Bishop e1, bishop h4, the final preparatory move to defend this. And after a5, h6, black simply designed a view of h6, h7 is coming. And yeah, if king h8, bishop f6 is just a checkmate. So a very interesting, a very fighting game by both the players. And finally, Nepo managed to came out on top and thus giving him the third place. Now we'll start looking at, uh, the match, the match of the tournament. Like what a match between Wesley and Carlsen. They managed to land each other, they managed to land blows on each other almost in every game. This was played in the second game after Carlsen had won the first one. After e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, e5, castles, bishop d6, c3, a6, bishop a4, b5. I mean, this all the system, with this bishop b5, e5 is not that popular. I mean, not that popular in the sense it has only been played a few hundred times compared to, other moves like e6, g6, which has been played by a few thousand times. So e5, but it was used by Carlsen before as well. And after e5, castles, bishop d6, c3, trying to break through with d4, a6, bishop goes to a4, b5, bishop g7. And here, I think black should play c4 and bishop c2 and something like this, so that whenever white goes d3 or d4, you can manage to play cd and still be, have some say in the center. After knight g7, d4, it is not at all easy, for black to do something about it. The position is getting open and the bishop is feeling very awkward on d6. So d4, c4, bishop c2, knight g6, d5, bishop e7, knight d4. Again, first of all, you cannot really take here because white simply takes and just, runs away with the position with e5 and f5 coming next. So black had to go back. And after knight d4, knight g5, f4, again knight has to go back. There are no other squares. And now Wesley simply took here and went for queen h5. And now you will see this pawn majority just useless against these three pawns. So technically, we are simply a pawn up on the king side. Plus, with this formation and with this two bishops, looking at, all this big diagonal, important diagonal, I feel white also has a very good attacking chances. So Magnus went for queen b6, king h1, queen c5, trying to, create the queens. But Wesley just came back, castles, bishop e3, the queen has to go back, and now again queen h5. With the idea probably to, bring the knight all the way to g5 and attack this. c5, trying to activate this bishop via b7, 92, bishop b7, e5, queen c7, knight f3, h6, and now just rook e1. Finally, Wesley managed to bring all the pieces to the game, and now maybe he just wants to play bishop c1 and go for some sort of f5, and probably h6 is also hanging, so at some point he can also take here. Magnus goes for queen c6, but it's already, I think it's too late. Cannot really suggest something nice for black here. And now the killer blow. Wesley goes for e6. Point is you cannot take, first of all, take with the pawn because just knight is hanging. And if you take with the queen also, there is f5, poking the queen and the knight. So basically e6 just cuts the black position into two halves. Carlsen uses final trick with knight h4, but it just doesn't work because after ef7, you have to take. I mean, what else? Yeah. Now simply we give up a queen for just one move, and we get it back on the second move, but we get exchange in return. So king goes back, knight c6 takes, rook e2, defending this pawn because this was a big threat. And now slowly, Wesley managed to consolidate this position, bring the king out, restricting the knight, also trying to bring the bishop in, b4, d2, guarding our pawn, rook d8, bishop e1. Again, this knight is feeling a little bit vulnerable because after rook f4, there are no good square for this knight. b3, simply took, bishop b5, trying to create some sort of chaos, in white's position. But white position is too solid to be to have any threats for black. So after rook f4, rook d4 is forced because the knight was hanging. Wesley simply took, goes for another exchange. After knight f5, simply bishop c2 because as the knight, goes somewhere. Actually, there are no good square for the knight to go because here, after rook e6, this is just hanging. And if knight e7, we simply take here and go here, and the pawn is going. Plus, black is down in exchange. So a very nice comeback by Wesley. Now let us see what happened in the Blitz games because after this victory, there were a couple of draws. So the match was tied into 2-2, and there was this Blitz playoff, which was again really amazing. So first thing first, yeah. So Carlsen was white in the Blitz playoff, the first game, and he chooses b4. I mean, such a baller, this guy is. I mean, he can literally play anything and everything against the best of the players. So b4, d5, bishop b2, knight f6, e3, bishop g4. Again, the position is quite solid for both the players. Bishop e2 takes, knight f3, stopping e5, and also developing your knight, e6, e3, guarding the pawn. because this was threatened. C6, C4, and now bishop D6. Yeah, the position is quite solid for both the sides. I really like how Wesley handled it. Like he's still being very solid. He's still being like Wesley, how he plays. 92, B6, although B6 is sort of a move where you want to play for a, I mean, you're not really going for it. Instead, E5 would have given, I mean, both the players some chances, but I can understand Wesley's situation that maybe he wants to be very solid with black pieces and then try something with white. He goes for D6, trying to exchange everything on the queen side. CB, bishop B6, rook C1, AB, queen E7, just rook B1, rook FC8, guarding the pawn, bishop F6. Yeah, Carlsen made a very interesting decision now. He took on F6, gave up the bishop, and he tried to transform into a different kind of position where he says that, okay, this pawn is weak, and I'll have some play against it. But also, if you see carefully, white's B4 pawn is also a little bit weak, so black has his play also. So now bishop C7, using the fact that rook C6 is not possible because of bishop H2, check, and then picking up the rook. So Magnus goes knight E1. Idea is very simple, knight D3, where it's not only protect this, but also eyes all this squares, which is very important in this kind of positions. Bishop D6, attacking the pawn. Knight D3, rook B8, once again going for it, knight F3. And here, I didn't really understand why Wesley didn't take here. Probably because of knight e5, but again, after bishop e3, I don't really see how white can actually go for a win here. For example, knight c6, I just remove my queen somewhere. And if you pick up my rook, I'm going to pick up yours. And next move, this is going. So, yeah, overall, this was, I felt, once you exchange, once you exchange this b pawn for this c pawn, I don't think black has any problem whatsoever. Wesley goes for rook b6. Again, I'm not criticizing it because rook b6 is fine as well, because next move we want to play b7, and again for white also, it's not easy to protect this b4 pawn. Knight e5, queen b7 is planned, queen c2, and yeah, Wesley just took here with the idea that if white takes here, just to go here, queen c6, attacking the rook, but simply rook f8. Although black is a little bit passive here, but the material is too little for white to do and to have any sort of play where he can actually try and play for a win. Magnus took d5, which is actually quite a decent move, but it has a reputation. So Wesley goes here, simply rook b3. The idea is that, okay, I'm going to play rook c3, trying to attack here, and still, white has maintained a pair of piece, pair of knights, and still, I believe white will have some chances, but Wesley was being very alert, managed to find the refutation, which is c5. I mean, it's the refutation in the sense that black is not better after this, of course, but he can still make a draw, So c5, Carlsen was a little bit amused. He didn't really understand what was going on. So he just took here. Wesley took, and now comes the blunder of the match. Queen c5 was played, and it was a clear blunder because rook c8. Not rook c8. Rook c8 would be another blunder in return, but simply rook c6. With the idea, first of all, this queen is hanging, and if you take here, there's a backline checkmate. So this was a big blunder from Magnus, but still, even after knight c5, white had this rook c3, using the same fact that there is a backline on black also, because let's say if you go knight d7, I'm just going to go rook c7 and pick up either the queen or the knight, thus equalizing the game. And if you go anywhere else, like knight e4, there's a backline for white as well. For black as well, and now white checkmates white using the same motive. It's quite instructive, from both the sides. So Carlsen took with the queen, and after rook c6, yeah, Wesley didn't really give him any chance here. h5, simply, uh, playing king g7, queen b8, going for this pawn, g3, fine, taking it to c1, and now rook a2, going for the p2 pawn. Queen f5, this has to be guarded. How do you guard it? Because after rook f1, there is rook f2. Cannot take here because of queen b1, check, and then picking up the pawn. b7, now simply took, and queen e5, guarding this, and threatening all sort of moves with queen g3, queen e3. So this was the first game of the Blitz playoff. Imagine, guys, like such uh, they went to so deep and of this match. Now let's see the second match. How Carlsen managed to come back. And again, it was very instructive, guys. E4, C5, knight F3, D6, bishop B5, knight D7. I mean, this is usually the move which you play when you want to play for a win, because this one will lead again to some exchanges. Knight D7, Carlsen. And here I was a little bit surprised, from Wesley's choice. If I want to draw, I would probably play D4 and then, try to open up the position, not play some sort of a closed position where black can sit and maneuver around. So after castles, knight f6, rook e1. This is, I think, one of the main lines of the positions. a6, bishop f1, b6. Black is just preparing, bishop b7 and asking white what does he want. You want to play d4 or not? So c4, bishop b7, knight c3, and now simply knight e5. The point is stops somewhat d4, because if now you play d4, I'm gonna give this check. The point is, if after queen f3, black just wins the pawn after cd, and if you play gf3, then I don't really mind, because you have ruined your structure and your king is slightly weak. So knight e5, knight e5, d5. This is exactly what I was talking about. When you are in a situation when you only need a draw, this is a nightmare position to play, because nothing is forced. Your opponent can slowly build up the position, and then you're left with some passive position in the end. This is what happened in the game, guys. So d3, e6, a3. Maybe he firstly wants to play rook b1 and b4 here. Bishop b7, b4, short castles, rook b1, knight. Now it's not easy for white to play this kind of position. Because in the long run, what does we want as black? We want to just simply take here. White has to take back and then play a5 and get this outside passer. Plus, once we take these two pawns and play a5, white has to, do something about this pawn. He cannot just keep it here, and thus giving us all these squares, dark squares, for our pieces to land. Wesley goes bishop e3, queen c7. But having said that, I'm not saying white is worse here. The position is completely equal, but I just feel it's psychologically it's more difficult to be white than black here. Rook b2, cb, ab, a5, and after taking on a5, knight b5, queen d8, queen c2. I mean, I would prefer actually queen a1, but queen c2 is fine as well. Bishop c6, rook a1, activating all the pieces. But the problem in white position is simply this bishop is not participating at all. Magnus goes h6, knight a7, asking Magnus, what do you want with this? And Magnus sets up a very interesting trap after queen c7. The point is, it looks very interesting to take here. The idea is, if you take, I'm going to take here, poking this, and not this, but this bishop. Queen has to come here to guard this. There are no other moves. And now simply to play rook b7, asking black, what do you want? And the point being that if you go queen d6 back, I'm just going to take the bishop, go here with the idea c6, and if you remove the queen, I'm just going to go c6 anyway, and knight has to go somewhere. And after d4, white is just simply better, because this rook is not participating. All this construction is really nice for white. So here actually black has to repeat with some rook b8 to come here, and rook a8, and thus giving white a clear draw, which is what white wanted in this position, considering the match situation, I mean. But the Carlsen trap was not to play queen d6, was to play rook a6, and you would be thinking like, what is going on? What is going on is simply, if white takes here, black takes, bishop c1. The idea is again, if you go here, I'm just gonna chase the queen till you leave this diagonal, and then I'm just gonna pick up the bishop. But what was a brilliant trap is that black simply goes queen a1. If you pick up this simple rook b6, and there is no defense against rook b1, and eyeing the first rank and picking up the bishop, maybe one, maybe two later on. So very devious trap from Magnus here. But Wesley plays knight b5, queen c8, and here Wesley goes for h3, which is very strange. This is not a position which you can take it slow. You have to just go for it. And I managed to find a line which is what I was talking about, just bishop d2. Pawn is attacked. You must defend it. Now simply knight d6, and I don't really see any play for black. I mean, play in the sense that he has to repeat. As after queen a6, we simply go c5 with the aid of d4 and finally activating our bishop. So this is not what black want. And if not this, then simply queen c7 has to be played. And after knight b5, again, I don't really see how black can continue playing for a win here. And eventually he has to go back, because if you take here simply after rook b5, it's not at all easy to protect this pawn. And yeah, this was quite a simple move actually. But I don't know, after h3, knight c5, it is not at all easy for white to play. And objectively also, I feel black is simply better. And once that happens, the world champion doesn't give any chances to anybody in the world. 97, and yeah, this is just completely hopeless for Wesley. And here Wesley was hoping for some sort of rook b3, trying to give up in exchange, but to get rid of this a pawn. But Magnus, being very smart, he just goes here. The point is, if you take this pawn, I'm just gonna go bishop c5, queen has to go back, and probably it's just queen d7, land the bishop on d4. Your king is weak. I have an outside passer, and it's not really felt that white is up a pawn. Wesley tried to break this, but after bishop f6, black just solidifies this even more. Bishop d4, queen c2, and now simply a3. Wesley goes for c5, trying to get some activity in the position. But after queen c5, this is just completely lost. Rook b8, rook b2 is coming next, which actually happened in the game. Bishop g4, the fact that rook a2 is bad because of this check, and pick up the rook. But of course, Carlsen is not going to miss that. He just plays f5, and he's going to pick up the rook or the bishop on the next move, and thus Wesley simply resigned. So guys, once again, it was 1-1, and now the final tiebreaker, which is Armageddon, where white gets 5 minutes and black gets 4 minutes, but black gets drawed, where अगर black से आप draw करोगे तो आप जीत जाओगे match. Wesley picked the black pieces. Unsurprisingly, of course, I think he was the most solid player in the whole event. Magnus goes for e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4, trying to go for the long game. Bishop c, knight f6, d3, bishop c5, and simply short castle. Wesley plays h6. He doesn't want any sort of bishop g5 kind of idea, so that's why stops his h6 immediately. c3, short castles, b4, bishop b6, a4 with the idea a5. Of course, black prevents it. Okay, 92 normal developing move, b6, rook e1, vacating the square for the knight to come later on. Black goes knight e7, which is kind of strange. I mean, usually you don't really play like this with a4, b4. I mean, a4, yes, but not b4. Because what Carlsen did d4 was, I mean, you don't really give white the center so easily. So I think move should be rook e8, bishop e6 to, change a pair of bishops, or even to, directly go here if you're ready to play, something like this. So I think Wesley sort of forgot, or, something happened to him, because usually he's very accurate in these kind of things. So here after 97, Magnus just goes t4. Again, black has to do something. Probably knight g6 was still saner, because it keeps the position. But Wesley probably just missed White's idea was. What White idea was, he took here and goes for d5, thinking that White has to take here and then you land a knight and Black is very comfortable. But after d5, e5, it is just bad for Black. Because if you take, I'm just going to take here. And if you take this, I mean, I have many options. I can take here, I can go knight e4. Only taking here is better. This is anyway hanging. And yeah, White is simply much, much better here. So Wesley decided to choose another plan, which is after knight h5, Black wants to go f6. But I believe with pawn on h6, this doesn't work so well because you leave all this light square quite weak. And also Wesley will not have enough time to get it also. So bishop f1, knight f4. This is how Black does it. Like knight f4, he puts on other knight to g6 and then goes f6. But okay, Carlsen was very alert here. He goes knight d3, attacking the knight. This is forced. And now a5, gaining more and more space and putting this bishop, even to a worse square. And now Magnus simply took and played queen d2, asking where do we want to take this knight. Has to go back, and now simply knight c5, and Black's position is completely ruined. f6 is not a move here, but Wesley anyway played it. But it's very hard to place Black. White simply wants to play bishop d3, maybe go g3, h4, h5, and put bishop back, queen here, and go for this checkmate. Wesley went for f6, and after bishop d3, he doesn't really have a good square for the knight. I mean, where do you go? I don't really see any good square. So Wesley just plays this, but now you will see all the counterplay has completely gone from Black's position, and he's just left with all these weaknesses and all these bad pieces. Whereas White has this connected passer. I mean, and all our pieces are actually playing in the game. And Carlsen just goes bishop c2, rook e8. He improves his position. g3, bishop c5, bc. Now you'll see this pawn majority is not really felt, whereas this pawn is really strong on e5. Bishop e6, rook d1, rook b8, protecting this. But White is already much better. I think he wants to play rook b3 now, putting more and more pressure on this pawn. Wesley goes back, rook e3, queen c8, knight h4, rerouting the knight probably to f4 via g2. It's one of the ideas. Also, sometimes you can play f4, h3, g4, go for some sort of g4 later on. Rook f8, knight g2, as we discussed. Bishop d7, h4, not giving any sort of counterplay for Black via g5. Bishop a4, rook b2, and finally, Wesley at least managed to exchange a pair of bishops, queen c2. But now you will see the problem that this pawn is going to be very difficult to defend. I'm just going to move this rook up a little, put queen here, and just go for this pawn. Knight c6, okay, attacking this, so we have to defend. Queen c3, g5, very important move, because if White lands h5 and knight f4, then he'll not have any counterplay on both the sides. So g5, simply Magnus took here and played f4, using the fact that if this, then probably I'm just going to play here, and White pieces are easier to bring on the king side than Black. Also here, having said that, even knight f4 is quite good. Again, rook h2 is faster, or knight is much, much better play. So after f4, king g7, king f2, rook h8, fg5, rook h2, queen f3. Again, we don't really mind giving up this pawn. Knight d4, queen d5, knight c6, e6. Yeah, White is just cruising through. Queen d7, you must take. And now this is hanging. This pawn has already reached the 7th rank. Rook d8, rook d2. Of course, we don't want to exchange this pawn for this pawn. So first we'll defend it. And now simply take here, because let's say if you take now, this pin is simply too strong and Black is just lost, which he has been lost for quite a few moves. So rook b7, Wesley played king g6, but after rook c7 is simply resigned. The two passes are going to queen very soon, and thus finally Magnus managed to beat Wesley in the finals. And what a final, guys, it was. Big shout out to both the players. What a fight it was, and especially to Carlsen. I mean, what a player, what a player. And thus, this is the final recap, guys, of the event. And I hope you liked it. And thanks for all the love. Bye bye, guys.